Deputy Ciaran Lynch, the need to make statutory provision to enable the tenant purchase scheme for local authority apartments under Part 4 of the Housing Miscellaneous Provisions Act. I understand, Deputy, you're sharing your time with Deputy Humphreys.
That's correct, Chairperson, and I'd like to thank the Ceann Comhairle's office for granting this adjournment before the House this evening, and particularly to thank Minister Penrose for being in attendance to reply to this adjournment debate as well this evening. Chairperson, as you will know, the issue of tenant purchase for tenants of local authority flats has been an issue for over 30 years now. And ultimately and fundamentally, what this issue boils down to is an issue of fairness and the right to buy. Right across Ireland, tenants living in local authority flats are being denied the right to buy their homes, whilst their neighbours living in houses can actually do so. And over the last 30 years, where we have seen an exponential boom in property prices and in home buying, that group were kept marginalised and isolated from what is a very, very basic tenet of Irish society, the right to be able to buy one's home. I would hope this evening, Chair, that this issue will have progressed and that we will see some measurable change in what has been a procrastination by the previous administration in dealing with this very, very basic issue. As I speak here tonight, Cork City Council, along with every other council in the country, are writing out to their tenants, informing them of a new tenant purchase scheme which is coming in place. And for tenants who have been in residence for 15 years, they are now being informed that they will receive a 45% discount on the purchase of their home. However, this group, who have been campaigning for over 20 years, are still being denied the right to actually buy the homes that they are presently living in. And what I would be asking, Chairperson, this evening is that this new government will take a new approach and will finally resolve an issue that has denied people the right to deny them to buy their homes for the last 20 years. So, Ceann Comhairle, in conclusion, the previous administration in the Miscellaneous Housing Bill did talk about putting in place a statutory framework and a legislative framework to allow this to happen under the incremental purchase scheme. I do believe that there are some difficulties with that approach. However, it was a move in the right direction. The difficulty is today is that the local authorities have not been enabled to actually allow that legislative framework to be enacted, and tonight, whilst I'm debating in this chamber, people are still being denied the right to buy their home. Thank you.
Deputy Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank Deputy Lynch for sharing his time with it, because this is a key argument of fairness, and a lot of people within my community will say it's discrimination. They've been born, grown up in their flat, yet they haven't been given the privilege of purchasing their own home. In 1988, the offer was rolled out across Dublin, and within my own area, and similar to your area, Chair, many tenants wished to purchase their own home. And this would have an awful lot of benefits. It would stop this quick changeover in the flat complexes. It would allow people to put down long-term roots within their communities and actually see it as a long-term home and prospect for their area. Instead, they've been constantly denied. As Deputy Lynch has just referred, there's no difference between a family living in a flat complex and a local authority house. But if you live in a local authority house, this evening you're offered a 45% discount on your home. And if you're living in a flat complex, you're said, go on the transfer list, and maybe someday you'll be transferred into a home and you'll have the possibility of purchasing it. Since '88, there's been court cases, and the court cases have gone on right up to 2009. Where families had challenged, which they believed they had an agreed price with the local authorities on the purchase of their home, and they fought that. They lost that case in 2009. They were tied in a legal limbo, and in fact, as many say over and over again, they've been discriminated against. There's many positive elements on it. It's an opportunity for low-income families to put down long-term roots. We only looked recently at the primetime special on Dolphin House. We know how strapped financially local authorities are. I think this would give an opportunity to allow income to come into the local authorities by selling off some of their flat apartments and investing that money in the stock. I think it's a natural progression to allow people to put long-term roots in their own communities. I would ask the Minister to fast-track this legislation. We need to move very quickly on it. If you think of a young family in 1988 that applied to purchase their home and they still are in limbo, so I would ask the Minister to move on this as soon as possible, and I thank the Minister for taking the debate.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, I wish to thank my party colleagues, Deputy Ciaran Lynch and Deputy Kevin Humphreys, for raising this important matter, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to inform the House of the position in relation to the proposed scheme for the tenant purchase of apartments. The sale of local authority apartments to tenants has a long and chequered history, as outlined by my colleagues, due largely to the complexity of the issues that are involved in devising ownership arrangements that will protect the interests of everyone involved into the future. Part 4 of the Housing Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2009 underpins the scheme now proposed, building on the long-standing arrangements in the private sector for the ownership and management of multi-unit residential developments. The scheme provides for individual complexes to be designated by the Housing Authority for tenant purchase, where they meet certain statutory criteria, and a substantial majority of the tenants living in them signalling in a plebiscite that they wish to have the opportunity to purchase their apartments. Before the first apartments are sold, the authority transfers ownership of the entire complex to a management company established for that purpose, which immediately leases all apartments back to the authority. The sale of individual apartments is effected by the transfer of the management company's apartment lease from the Housing Authority to the purchaser. The new apartment sales scheme will be based on the incremental purchase model introduced in June 2010 for designated newly built social housing. The level of discounts under the new scheme will, therefore, be related to household income rather than length of tenure. The incremental purchase approach will promote sustainable communities in the complexes concerned, because it gives an incentive to purchasers and their families to remain living in the apartments. At the same time, the selling arrangements will ensure that the state shares in any windfall profit from resale of the apartment before the housing authority's charge of the property withers away. I wish to emphasise I have no proposal to amend the 2009 legislation with a view to sell apartments by any other method. The necessary commencement order, regulations and detailed guidance have to be finalised in order for the apartment sales scheme to be introduced. The transition from a rented social housing apartment complex to a mixed tenure of privately owned and social rented accommodation adds an extra dimension to the legal and practical problems that can arise in private apartment complexes. For this reason, my department is giving particular attention to the drafting of the necessary documentation for the 3 complex transfers of property ownership involved in the scheme and for the establishment of the management company as provided for in the legislation. My aim is to put in place as soon as possible the last building blocks in a robust legislative framework that will stand the test of time for all stakeholders, that is, apartment buyers, apartment tenants who choose not to buy, and local authorities. I think we will certainly will commit to making progress as quickly as possible in relation to this important issue, which, as expounded by both deputies, focuses upon fairness and equality, and certainly pursue it as expeditiously as possible within the legal complexities as outlined herein.